What was your is this be serious moment? A customer came to pay for some lessons and I swiped her card upside down, so I had to swipe it again. She caused a scene stating I charged her twice. I just sat there with a monotone "I only charged you once" every time she took a second to breath. I worked at arcade bowling alley combo that served food like a full restaurant. My position had me deliver the food and take the dirty dishes to the back. So, there's a group of like 6 people bowling and they ordered our sampler platter that had a little of everything from the appetizers menu. I bring this platter out and set it down asking if there was anything else they needed. Without really looking, this woman says we're good. I begin to turn around and this woman grabs my arm and yanks me towards her like I was a kid and says, "Where the frick are my chicken wings?" In disbelief of what was happening, I paused looking at her, then the platter, eventually saying, "They're right there, mom, in this little basket on the platter." She lets go and with a skeptical expression says, "Okay," as if she really didn't believe the wings were there. If I didn't hate working there and my shift was any farther from being over in 10 minutes, I would have spoken to her manager. But I didn't care enough to stay to get it sorted and just wanted to leave. Man, I swear, working in the food industry is a whole crap. Generally, most people are normal, but you get to see the crazies. I used to work at Subway in my teens and a man reached over the glass to get in my face and yell at me for putting mayo on the wrong side of the bread. A woman claimed to have left her money at home while I was working one day after she ordered 2 sandwiches. They take about 10 minutes to cook. I said that's okay. When you come back they will be ready. She said she wanted the sandwiches first and that she'd be right back after she and her daughter ate because they lived right around the corner. I said if you live right around the corner you'll be back before the sandwiches are done. But I can't give you food before you pay. She lost her crap on me. It was wild. She left with no food and didn't come back. Had a customer try that line on us once. My boss at the time didn't skip a beat and said, "Nice try, but this ain't popper." The guy pulled out a huge pimp roll of cash and paid. We're in automotive, not food BTW. 20 years ago, girl tried to fight me in a bar. All I did was look at her funny, unintentionally. I was going to the bar for a round of drinks and forgot the order. Happened to be looking at her when I was lost in thought. Anyway, she challenged me outside. I couldn't believe it. I'm 6'1", 220 and she was small. Anyway, the bouncer heard her and kicked her out. She was still in the sidewalk an hour later when we left. Followed me to my car pushing me and punching my back. It was surreal. Used to work at Disney World. It's 9 AM and a lady comes into our guest services demanding a refund on her turkey leg because it tastes weird. We ask her details to process the refund. Turns out she bought it 3 days ago and was carrying it in her bag since. Have a magical day. When I walked into the apartment I shared with a friend, and it was covered in vomit because her dog ate a pillow and had puked it up. 2 days earlier, the living room was covered in dog puke and she had just sat there in the middle of it. She thought it was funny. I called a moving company on the spot and arranged for the first appointment they had, and put my stuff in storage while I found a new place. That was my last roommate. Shoulder called a shelter too. The dog won't last long if that roommate thought it was funny to see it vomit all over the room. I work in a somewhat popular restaurant. Fast casual style. Think Chipotle, Panda Express, Panera. And it was my first shift as a line cook by myself. I had already worked in the kitchen and can do every position there, but it was my first time doing it by myself. Well, it was a busy night for us, and we were short-staffed. By the time we had slowed down, I had been exhausted and hot as heck. I had been standing over 8 burners for about an hour and was taking my lunch. I sat in the office and the AC was blasting and it was well needed. My co-worker who was cashiering that day, and she took her lunch 15 minutes after mine started. She saw me in the office and demanded I get out of her spot. Told me being a cashier is harder than a line cook because she has to deal with the public. When I told her I wasn't moving, she told me to frick off and was a bee the rest of the night. It took about everything in me not to slap her, but instead I told my co-workers who told the mod, and soon after she was fired for stealing. Oh boy, sometimes karma feels so good. I just had one yesterday. I've been going to my local high school's running track to jog and exercise since lockdown. Well, to park your car you have to go through a driveway that's designated with arrows as one way. There's an exit on the other side of the parking lot. Anyway, the soccer moms in town are notorious for parking their cars in this driveway and making it hard to get into the actual parking lot. As I pull into the driveway, one of these women thinks that it's a brilliant idea to put her car into reverse as I'm entering. I couldn't swerve out of the way because there was an SUV parked right at the mouth of the entrance, taking up half the available space. So I reacted and honked my horn. She proceeded to panic, throw the car into drive and run it into a small boulder that lines this driveway. It ripped the passenger side air deflector clean off. According to her, I'm now a freaking butthole that honks her horn for no reason. Had a new boy in the office who had no idea of what personal hygiene consists of. Not a great start. He was loud and obnoxious, not even good at his job. Then one day, at the smoking shelter, he starts talking about catching rabbits in traps. He's pointing to the fields around the building and saying he's going to ask for permission to put traps out there. We laughed. For all the crap he talked, not one of us took him seriously. When we go back inside, he heads straight to the cubicle of our office manager. This cubicle is adorned with pictures of rabbits. Some are her pets, some are just rabbits she thinks are cute. She has statues, rabbit pens and pencils. Nobody in their right mind would have asked this woman in this cubicle about going trapping rabbits. He did. I was surprised he made it to the end of the day. I was not surprised when he didn't return the day after. So far this one is my favorite. A couple sat down at the movie theater 15 minutes into the movie. The lady sits right beside me and is holding a full conversation at full volume with the man barely acknowledging her. I politely ask her to lower her voice as it is distracting. She stares forward for 2 minutes before leaning over. Maybe if you weren't listening to my conversation, you wouldn't be distracted. I was too livid to even respond and the movie was ruined. The movie was Wonder Woman. I have definitely gotten employees for jerks at the movies, but I felt like I might punch this lady if I looked her direction. Either way, she did lower her voice after that. There was a girl in my class who was such an idiot, and she would outwardly disrespect the professor all the time. This one time while the professor was talking, she started to whistle. He stopped class in disbelief and asked her why she was doing it and why she was being disruptive, and she said it's a thing she does without even thinking, and then whistled again and was like, see. I honestly don't get the mentality of people who misbehave in a university classroom. You're paying for the privilege to be there and get a degree. I hope the professor threw her out of the class. In high school I took philosophy and we were talking about dogs and their souls or something. One girl argued that essentially ownership shows if something has a soul and followed up with people own dogs. A person has never owned another person. Everyone just kinda looked at her because apparently she forgot that slavery happened. No, it's okay people. Slaves aren't people. They don't have souls. Ex-girlfriend got her friend to send stay away from armrest fulcrum messages to my colleague and then denied all knowledge. Noped out of that one. I didn't read your username, so I thought she was pulling some sort of my spot dib for the armrest. My sister's mother-in-law opened up all her wedding gifts and packed them away while she was on honeymoon. It's been 3 years since, but I'm still mad thinking about it. When a customer accused me of making her come back for her prescription refills every month when we were restricted to fill 1 month of medications at a time. No exceptions. The government made everyone aware of the restrictions and people still got upset, but that took the cake. I imagine dealing with customers at a pharmacy can be pretty stressful. I worked at a Walgreens for like 6 months as a cashier, not in the pharmacy at all, and I remember a lady coming up at me super frustrated because she couldn't get her prescription filled. She was acting pretty strange too, like hitting herself on the arm. Kind of a scary situation to be in when you're a teenager. Someone asked if I could break a $100 bill in pennies. I just looked at her, looked around to make sure I was definitely not currently working in a bank. It was a bakery, and said sorry. That person would be lucky to get that at a financial institution too. Some places charge for change. Some restrict on what you can get. Pennies come in boxes of $25. I've turned people away because we didn't have enough boxes to last us, or they just don't have it. The time this mother yelled at me for saying excuse me, her and her family were taking up an entire bike path, including the shoulder. Instead of cutting through them, I moved onto the shoulder and cheerily excused myself as I passed her. Didn't touch her and she didn't really have to move since I managed to squeak by. Yet as I passed, she started screaming a bunch of crap. Well, she did not expect me to come to a screeching halt and ask if there was an issue. She promptly hid behind her husband and wouldn't even look at me. All that energy for what? Fake but confidence SMH. If you're gonna talk crap, be ready to back to it up. I have worked at Spirit Halloween every season for the past 5 years. I would highly recommend if you're trying to make some spare cash. Anyway, super shady things happen at Spirit Halloween all the time, so I have endless stories to tell. For this story, I was working the dressing room, basically just regulating who goes in and taking costumes out of the bags to withhold accessories, to prevent theft, etc. This was my first year working there, so I was about 20. Just a couple days before Halloween, a girl around my age came to the dressing room with a typical college girl costume. That's all I'll say. She says something like, "Oh good, we're about the same size." I'm in a rush so I wouldn't have time to find an associate to help me. I just kinda smiled and took the bag from her. Like what the heck does that even mean? I unpack the costume, leave the accessories, and put it in a basket to carry to the dressing room. She looked really confused, so I just asked her to follow me and I'd get her a dressing room. I wish I was making this crap up, but this girl says to me, "Why would I go back there for you to change her?" I can't even remember exactly how I responded because I was so confused, but it was something along the lines of, "You try on the costume yourself so you know how it fits you. An associate doesn't do it for you." And this girl had the audacity to be mad at me for saying that. Her response was basically, "Well, I don't want to have to get out of my clothes and change into the costume, so it isn't worth my time." That's so unsanitary to have a bunch of people trying the costume on instead of you just doing it. So I don't even want it anymore, followed by her storming out. Removed my comments about pay because for some reason people are getting defensive about my belief that the wage is acceptable for the amount of effort put in. Based on my experiences managing a Spirit Halloween and dealing with the dressing rooms, I thought this was going somewhere very different. Me and my friend, both around 14 at the time, snuck some of my dad's whiskey while my parents were out. We each had a few sips from the bottle, did the obligatory it burns, and that was about it. At first. A few minutes later, my friend starts acting really drunk. He's crashing into walls, falling down, slurring his speech. I'm thinking there's no way this kid is drunk. We had like 0.25 ml of that whiskey. I don't even feel anything except the lingering little burn in my throat. He's gotta be faking it. He starts dry heaving, smashed a lamp, then went toward the TV like he was going to grab it. I had to literally bear hug him while he fought like he was resisting arrest. He was foaming at the mouth and screaming. And wouldn't you know it, just like that he sobered up and relaxed. So in the span of 5 minutes he got drunk off a sip of whiskey, wrecked my house, fought me like a wild animal, then sobered up. That's some grade ABS. This one girl in my class loved to apply perfume whenever she could, despite the fact that the girl sitting next to her was very sensitive to fragrance. One day she sprayed a whole bunch on and the girl started having a coughing fit and then a migraine and was sent to the nurse's office to calm down. When the teacher asked the girl why she did that, all she said was, "What's the big deal? It's not my fault. I don't like people sometimes." This happened in a class I TA'd for once. Literally had to walk the girl to the nurse cause we were all concerned she'd pass out in the hall. I was 5 minutes early to service her home for pests. She yelled at me for 2 minutes about how inconsiderate I was and then told me to wait in my truck. Her husband then pulled up and asked what I was doing and invited me in. She then continued to yell at me about how I shouldn't have come in because she said to wait until the appointed time. Her husband apologized and told me to just leave and gave me $20 cash. I called my boss and explained the whole situation and we blocked all her account information. Poor husband, you've gotta wonder what redeeming features she has that were enough for him to marry her despite that BS. I worked at Target in the guest service desk. A couple of years ago, around Christmas time, a woman comes in and complains about the string of lights not working properly. I told her I could return it or exchange it. She says she'll grab a different one and come back. Perfect. Comes back 30 or minutes later and starts telling me how there were only 2 packages left. She complains about how the packaging isn't perfect. Then she looks me dead in the eyes and says, what I'd really like you to do is give me this one for free. I chuckled and said, we're Target, not in the business of giving items away for free. The most I can do is 10% off for an imperfect package. Needless to say, she returned both items. This only happened a few days ago. I got called into the manager's office and got offered the temporary clothing manager position. I didn't necessarily want a manager's position, but I had basically been doing the job for months without the benefits, so I accepted it. Went onto the shop floor and was immediately greeted with congrats from colleagues. A girl I work with that had recently become a duty manager. How she became a manager is beyond me. Went and told my business to everyone, including the fact that she had been offered the job first and turned it down, so that's why it was handed to me. Everyone knew I was being offered the position before I did. 15 minutes later, I'm approached by a different manager saying there's an issue with putting me on the system, but they're trying to rectify it. For the next 2 hours I'll listen to the girl telling everyone and anyone how hard she is going to have it, that she will now have to cover the clothing department as well as her own department. She told colleagues, friends, and even customers who didn't even ask. She made my business known to everyone. Eventually I was brought into the office and officially told that I wouldn't be the clothing manager. Boss missed a deadline to put me on the system. The manager apologized profusely and I went back out on the floor to hear the new DM telling my story yet again. Longest shift ever. I didn't leave him in the car that long, plus the windows were cracked. My mother-in-law, the last time she was ever allowed to watch my oldest child. He was 2 and it was 90 degrees Fahrenheit. I was heavily pregnant and had to sit on my hands the next time I saw her because I wanted to cave in the Italian leather handbag she calls a face. I used to work at the register of my college campus store. People mostly came in to buy energy drinks, gum or whatever, but you could also buy like sweatshirts and even computers. But given most people only bought like one small thing, we didn't have carts or baskets anywhere for shoppers. Anyway, one day a woman comes in, a student's mom I'm guessing, and asks me for help to reach a sweater on the top shelf. I grab it for her and go to hand it to her, but she motions at me to hold on for it. She proceeded to walk around the store grabbing several items and then giving them to me to hold. She literally shopped for like 10 minutes using me as her personal shopping cart. Luckily I had a co-worker in the store on the same shift, so he was able to handle the register. At the end of this whole ridiculous segment, she got a message on her phone, read it and said, oh, you know what, I actually have to go meet my son. I'll come back later to get the things I need. And then she left, and I was left standing there with an armful of random crap that I then needed to go put back one by one. Like, come on woman. To those calling me a B or saying they would never do that, I applaud your bravery. I was an 18-year-old kid who was pretty excited to have a job to begin with, and was scared of losing it from being rude to a customer. I definitely spent some solid time in the shower thinking of how I would have handled it differently. I was biking on a bike path. Man and his family taking up both lanes. I wait. Finally proceed to go around in the grass. Man says you can't do that. I think he'll find that yes, you can in fact do that. Lady standing outside the grocery store this weekend harassing those who went into the grocery store by saying stuff like, if you trust God, you'll remove your masks. I was at an ATM getting money. As a habit I covered the keypad while typing the PIN. You could never be sure there weren't any camera around. Out of nowhere, this bee at the next ATM said to me, you think people would peek at your PIN? I was startled. It's a basic courtesy to not interfere with others doing their business at ATM. I turned to her and said, are you serious? She had the look of indignant and contempt as if I accused her of stealing PIN, and said, why are you covering the PIN? I was taken aback and retorted, if you weren't looking, how do you know I covered the PIN? She huffed and puffed and left. Co-worker gave me the whole we're all in this corona thing together and have to sacrifice together speech, then called a departmental meeting, excluding me, to bully our supervisor into making sure that 100% of lost hours and lost income from scheduling changes and cuts fall on my shoulders while all of her and her friends' paychecks remained completely intact because he is just a part-timer. We're the real team here and not him. Technically he's not entitled to any hours at all, so it's okay to cut them all. My income for the month dropped over 50% while the real team that I've been a part of for 5 years didn't lose a dime. You can file for unemployment for that. I used to be the community admin for an online game about a decade ago, and there was a guy who was permabanned who kept making new accounts to protest his ban on the official forums and get people to try and rally behind him to unban him or put malicious links to scam people. Our GM staff was largely outsourced, so I did most of the forum moderation on my own. He had obvious and telling posting habits and horrendous grammar, so it was usually easy to know if it was him, and a quick check of an IP address to verify, and the account was usually banned and posts deleted where appropriate. Well, this idiot one day, using a bunch of different accounts, I'm not even sure why. Banning was easy on my end and he made like 20 messages supporting himself, all that logging in and out, made a long chain of posts trying to deliberately bribe me, out in the open, to unban his account. Not even a private message, just straight up in a new thread offering me cash to do so. For one, I started the job as a player, recruited for my honesty and ethics as a whole in the community. It wasn't happening, and the cash was negligible in what I was being paid. Second, how dumb does one have to be to think someone would accept a deal like that with everyone watching? Or did he think I would be so stupid to fall for something like that and blackmail by showing any sign of interest? I had the webmaster IP block him after that since he was using a static IP, and left the thread open for posterity to prove the point. Happened a few days ago. Customer hasn't paid their bill in 5 months, and was in bad standing even before coronavirus. We actually agreed to wait her late payment fees of 3 months. B then has the audacity to demand that we remove 75% of her bill, then demanded to speak to the CEO when we obviously refused. I love it when customers think they can just keep going up the chain of command to the CEO. Like, yes lady, let me get Elon Musk for you because you filled up your Tesla with gas. Told a friend that I didn't really feel comfortable around them anymore because of their recent aggressive behavior. Naturally they threatened to throw me and my girlfriend in jail. This just happened to me a few days ago. I was walking my dog, who is not child friendly, and we were coming up on a woman and her small child. I could tell the kid was gonna make a beeline for my dog, so I crossed to the other side of the street so there wouldn't be any issues. This lady yells, "What? My kid can't pet your dog," as if her kid was just entitled to touch any dog she wanted to. I said he's not good with kids, sorry, and she yelled back, "Whatever be." I was stunned, honestly. Thought about that interaction the rest of the walk, but had I just let her kid come up to my dog, that kid probably would have gotten bitten. In high school, a person I knew, thought to be reasonably intelligent, who had recently been accepted to UCLA and later went on to be an attorney, asked if debauchery was a new thing or had it been around a while. Totally new. Todd in accounting came up with it. My hometown has a town fair every year, and they do ride bracelets for the first and last day of the fair. It's a 3-day fair. Ride bracelet times go from 10 AM to 4 PM, and then 4 PM closing, 10 PM. I got onto a ride with around 40 other people at 3:55 PM as the one last ride before we left for the day. The guy running the ride literally waited for the 5 minutes until 4 PM and then took everyone with a bracelet off the ride because hey, it's technically past 4 and I didn't start the ride yet. This was an 85 degree heat kinda hot in New England with uncovered metal seats. I was 10 then, and I'm still mad that they're that petty. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.